Welcome to My Money, Your Money, a weekly talk show on generational wealth, wealth management, and personal finance. Now introducing our host, Brigette Lumpkins.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to My Money, Your Money, where we talk about all things money with the goal of closing the racial wealth gap. I'm your host, Brigette Lumpkins. I earned an MBA from Wharton, and I've worked at firms such as Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers, covering institutional and private clients, as well as raising capital for investment funds. I'm so pleased to welcome today's guest, Mr. Gerald Grant III, who is founder and president of the G Financial Group, a financial services firm affiliated with Equitable Advisors, and he's based in Miami, Florida. Gerald holds an MBA from Florida International University and brings decades of financial services experience, as well as credentials from institutions like Wharton and Columbia University to bear to help his clients prepare for long-term security and comfort. Gerald, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So before we get started, I want to make sure I didn't miss anything key because it was a brief intro. So is there anything you'd like to add about yourself?
Well, I'm the author of two books. The first one is Bold Moves to Creating Financial Wealth. And once you've accumulated it, the second one is The Power of Generational Wealth, how we teach you to transfer it to the family members.
Right. And we see this a lot. I mean, I think there was recently a news article about Aretha Franklin's descendants in court fighting over her estate, which is just tragic because clearly she had amassed some level of wealth during her lifetime. And it's really sad to see her family fighting in court. So I'm sure that book is very helpful to your readers. So your bio notes over a decade of experience as a retail banker and branch manager before you became a financial planner. So I'm curious about what in your banking experience prompted you to make that switch?
Well, as a vice president with a major bank, my role is to generate information for clients. So once a month, I would have an educational seminar where I would bring in either an accountant, a financial advisor, or an attorney to talk about topics of interest. But at one of the particular seminar, one of my financial advisors was making a presentation. And when he gave the answer, I could see in the clients' faces that they weren't quite understanding what he said. So I said, this is what he meant. So about after the third time he did it, and I said, this is what he meant, one of my clients said, you know what, you should be the one up here teaching this class. And as a result of that, that was that haha moment. And that's when I made the decision to change careers.
That makes a lot of sense. One of the purposes of this show is to do just that, right? Demystify, translate, be a glossary of terms or a dictionary for people for these intimidating or complicated sounding concepts that are much simpler in real life or that are, tackleable, right, with the right advice and support. And so, that knowledge is gate kept, I believe, intentionally. And so I can see why that would have inspired you. And I'm glad it did, because that's what we need in our community, people to make that accessible. And while we're at it, I just want to note for our listeners, nothing that we're going to talk about today is investment advice. All situations are different. And we do encourage you to contact a professional to follow up on anything that you learned today or that you get curious about that comes up. So as you know, Gerald, the racial wealth gap between Black Americans and white Americans is on the order of 10x magnitude. And that means for our listeners that for every $100 in net worth a white person has, a Black person has $10 in this country. And this is obviously for a myriad of ongoing reasons. But I'd like to get your individual solutions. From a financial planning perspective, what can we do to work towards closing this gap? What are common behaviors we as Black people need to modify regarding how we budget and spend our today money?
Well, the first thing is what you got to do is you got to always pay yourself first. Mm-hmm. Because if you just go down your bills, by the time you pay everybody, there's nothing left.
Right.
So you have to prioritize whether or not I'm going to say 5% or 10%. And it's amazing how you could fit everything else in after that. But the number one thing we have to do is to learn that discipline of paying yourself first.
Right. And if you're a salaried employee for most companies, this is pretty easy to do. You can do it with your pre-tax dollars, which makes it even easier from a cash flow perspective month to month. And it can be automated so you don't even see that money versus maybe if you're an entrepreneur and have to manually make that happen.
I agree.
Yeah. So it's a great habit to get into, especially when you're young and you can benefit from compounding, a very important concept. So regarding our future dollars, statistics show that most Americans are underprepared for retirement. So it's following, given the effect and other gaps that we see with other outcomes, that Black folks are even less. And according to a study by the Social Security Administration, Latin Latinx households tend to put their investment dollars, who they themselves first, they do tend to put those investment dollars into really kind of low yielding investments like CDs, which are very popular in my country. The whole thing about CDs in my country, it's ongoing still. While white households own much higher yielding assets like equities and stocks and have additional money in tax protected vehicles like metals that they protect open IRAs on their own. So what are your thoughts on investing throughout the lifespan, in terms of risk and how our community can be?
Well, the biggest thing is no matter where you are, you just got to start.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to start big because it's just like working out. You don't start out doing 10 or 100 push-ups. You start out by doing 2 or 3, and then you gradually work your way up. It's the same thing when it comes to money.
Mm-hmm.
You start with I'd rather you start and be consistent with, say, 2% or 3%, as opposed to jump to 5% and then you stop. It's the consistency of doing it over time that makes a difference. And not only do you put money away and save, you have to save based on your time horizon. So if it's money you need in the next 24 months, it needs to be in a savings account or a checking account or something that's there so that the money's there when you need it. But if your money's for long term, like, for example, retirement, it needs to outpace taxes and inflation. And the only areas that could do that is in equities like mutual funds and our stocks.
Right. Or even alternative investments like venture capital, private equity, if you can get access to that, which is changing, but is kind of an advanced topic, right, for people who are just beginning. But for those who aren't beginning and are looking for that next horizon, there are a lot of other asset classes that are yield higher returns than CDs or money market accounts.
That's correct.
Right. Now, there's a great expression that says scared money don't make money. Right. And so this really goes to my question about risk. And so I think that, like during the great financial crisis, the GFC that we call it, as we call it in finance, I personally invested in spiders, but I didn't put nearly as much as I had because I was afraid I would need that money to live because I was afraid I was going to lose my job. Of course, over 10 years later, that feels like a foolish decision. So it's hard to put cash into risky investments when the market is wobbly or has crashed. But history shows us that that is the best time to take risk. And so given the current economic environment, do you think it's a good moment to invest in riskier assets?
I wouldn't necessarily say riskier assets. I would say assets that have growth, because if your objective is for your money to grow, you have to put it in things that will grow.
Mm-hmm.
And what I normally tell people to do, you invest over time, regardless of how old you are now. If it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's going to be better. So I would rather you consistently invest all the time. So when the market goes down, it's an opportunity to buy something on sale. When the market goes up, you're participating in the growth. So if you're always doing it, you're always in the right place.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Okay, we have to pause now to pay the bills. Stay with us, viewers. We'll be right back.
At DRT Behavioral Services, we provide culturally sensitive mental health evaluations with thorough treatment plans, incorporating alternative forms of wellness, not just Western traditional medicine. Besides medication management and psychotherapy, we provide education to people in the areas of minority mental health with classes on your diet's impact on mood and sleep hygiene for better rest. We also offer weight loss therapy, massages, and facials. Visit brainlovehelp.com today.
I grew up down here in South Florida, so for me, it's a little bit more personal.
For the Mesman & Dover Law Firm, it's about community.
For us, South Florida's our home. You all are our people.
Our family, our future.
The difference we'll make for you, your loved ones. your kids matters, because to us, it's personal.
If you need us, call us 24/7 at 866-954-MORE.
That's 866-954-6673. Demesman and Dover Law Firm, youraccidentattorneys.com.
Help comes in many forms. As a Miami-Dade County bus operator, you can help your community, help those in need, and even help yourself. Operators have the opportunity to earn more than $50,000 a year plus built-in overtime, earn more than 13 paid holidays and vacation days, and take advantage of the tuition reimbursement program. Plus, qualified new drivers will receive a $5,000 sign-on bonus. Become a driving force in our community. Apply now at miamidade.gov/busdriver.
And we're back. So one of the things I've been talking about recently with friends and other peers in the business is their number, right? We're sort of comparing notes on what our number is. And that number, capital N, is a number sort of refers to the amount of assets or the level of assets you need to sort of retire comfortably while maintaining your level of your standard of living and planning for future healthcare potentially, since epidemiological trends, generally speaking, people are living longer. And so how do you help your clients calculate that number and decide how much money they need to have before they pull the trigger and stop earning income?
It's a very complicated process, but we make it simple.
Okay.
You take your living expenses of how you want to live your life. And that's how you're going to determine how you're going to calculate what you need in the future. So if you take your living expenses today, and then you add inflation to it, we can calculate in the future how much those expenses are going to be. And then we subtract the fixed income that you're going to get, maybe the money you may get from Social Security, and then that gap is what your investments and your retirement funds need to generate. And then if we calculate, it's going to take whatever that percentage for you to maintain your quality of life. Once you plug those numbers in, it gives you an answer, and then you know when you have enough. And so we have a joke with clients. So look, you've got enough. Why are you still working? and within 6 months from that point in time, they normally say, you know what, you're right, and that's when they retire.
Well, I can't imagine being properly retired though, like sitting on a porch drinking lemonade. That I would be bored to tears. So I think a lot of people work because what else would they do, right? It's like, some people I know think that the minute you stop working is the minute you head to your grave, but I think it does depend on what you're doing, and maybe you just shift.
So the key in retirement is you have to stay mobile. You have to keep moving. So we plan vacations, we plan trips, we plan activities. You could be a mentor, you can give back to the community, but you have to stay in motion.
That's right. So, I'm curious to know, when you think about planning for that number, because your annual number, that's relatively easy to calculate. But what kind of life expectancy are you having people prepare for? I have a family member who just turned 100. So I don't think anybody expected her to live quite that long.
So the average life expectancy for most people is between 83 to 87. So we will stretch it out to age 90 or 95.
Mm-hmm.
If you have longevity on your side of the family. I would rather you have money than to run out of money.
Right. That's right. Nobody wants to run out of money when they're 95. It's not like you're going to go driving Uber at that point in time to make ends meet. So I want to, going back to what we were talking about earlier, I want to talk a little bit more about wealth transfer because, first of all, you get into when you're dealing with really, really wealthy people who are above that threshold where you have and you have to pay estate taxes. That's generally when you have like a big team of folks coming in, except Aretha Franklin. But, that's when people often have a big team of folks coming in. But if you have, a million or two or a few $100,000 that's going to be left over at the end of your life that you want to transfer, this is a real sticking point. I've seen people, disputes over the parents or the grandma's house because nobody paid the taxes, hurt feelings. It's not a coincidence that in a 2012 study by the Institute for Policy Studies, 30% of the Fortune 400 wealthiest people had inherited at least $50 million. So wealth transfer is really key to us closing this wealth gap, right? Because our ancestors did work very hard, and there often are assets in the family that get lost to ineffective wealth transfer. So, and I also saw this when I was an advisor at Goldman, where it was difficult to have conversations around this. And so, what are some of the key issues you've observed that are obstacles to people making an effective plan for wealth transfer? And how do you help clients work through those issues? There was a colleague at Goldman used to say, let's say you died yesterday. What is your wife doing today? Because it was always like a guy who owned the money. So how do you approach this with your clients? How do you get past that barrier of talking about how they're going to leave their money in their life?
Well, the term I use is I call it the fire drill, and I'm saying, well, it's in the manual, but if you never practice it, you don't really know what to do. So
Right.
the idea is, will your family really know what to do? And I'm
Mhm.
saying, well, let's practice it right now. And if you don't like the outcome of what you see right now, we have either 30 or 60 days to put it in place.
Okay.
It's like a homework assignment. If you don't have a date or time to it, it's going to be tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes into next year. And then 2 years from now, it's still tomorrow. So
Right.
for our clients, when we say 30 days or 60 days, if it's July 1st, we're going to say, well, on August 1st, we're going to examine it, or September 1st. So now you make it real. And as a result, that's how we help to keep them accountable.
Now, I want to, broadly speaking, can we talk about sort of tips or suggestions for a framework you can share with your audience today to help them think about better spending today, saving and investing for tomorrow, and the eventual transfer of assets when they're gone? Do you have any sort of mnemonic device or sort of format that you typically approach each new client relationship with, or way that you think about it that's kind of formulaic that people can take away and start noodling on?
Well, we start out with a financial, it's like an expense worksheet. It
Okay.
gives them a reality check as far as this is how much money you make and this is how you spend it. And then when you get to the bottom line, this is what's left over. Do you want to improve that number? So
Mhm.
in a way, if it's not the number that you want, it lets you now prioritize how you really spend money. Are you really spending it on things that you just want? Or are you spending on the things that you really want to make a difference? And as a result, by just bringing that awareness to them, then they start to see, I need to put money towards the objective that I want. I need to pay myself first. And in many cases, if they have debt, I don't care how you invest the funds, it's not going to make as much as what they're going to charge them on a credit card. So their best investment is to pay off those debts first.
Right, right, exactly. I mean, debt is a real issue when it comes to I think the Black community, especially, and I think a lot of people are getting concerned now because plans for student loan forgiveness have been thwarted, at least for the time being. And so people who thought that might happen may have made other plans or other moves around that and now have to recalculate yet again. And can you talk a little bit about debt and its role in the appropriate use of debt? Because I know some people are of the school of thought that like you should never have debt for anything and they want to pay off their mortgage early, but maybe that extra mortgage payment could be better off for work better for them in a Roth IRA, for example. So what is your view on debt and its place, and how people should be thinking about managing it?
I see debt in two forms. There's I call it good debt and I call it bad debt. A
Hmm.
good debt is like a mortgage where you can deduct the interest.
Hmm.
A bad debt is like a credit card. So if it's going to cost you more than you can invest, it's best to invest in yourself. So we
Hmm.
teach people to create their own bank and then borrow from themselves and then pay themselves back as opposed to
Hmm.
using credit cards.
Well, that's great. So yeah, you can pay yourself back through equity in your home, or is that what you mean, right? Like building an asset and then borrowing against the equity in your home. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I've seen a lot of people do that successfully to make important moves. So we need to take a real quick break. Got more bills to pay. Stay.
Give us a call.
Help comes in many forms. As a Miami-Dade County bus operator, you can help your community, help those in need, and even help yourself. Operators have the opportunity to earn more than $50,000 a year plus built-in overtime, earn more than 13 paid holidays and vacation days, and take advantage of the tuition reimbursement program. Plus, qualified new drivers will receive a $5,000 sign-on bonus. Become a driving force in our community. Apply now at miamidade.gov/busdriver.
I know you're a published author, and I wanted to hear a little bit more about the books that you've written. Maybe you can talk a little bit about book one and then book two and the segue between those two and kind of your thought process in authoring them.
Well, the reason why I did the book was I did seminars, and then after the seminars, people would come up to me and say where they can get more information. And then the more I did the research, it was not, I couldn't find it in any one place.
Right.
So the book was written from the point of view, if I'm not there yet, how should I start? So it starts by having a budget. It starts by paying yourself first. It talks about creating your emergency fund. And then it also talked about investing and the time frames of how to invest, and then putting money away for retirement. And over the years, we've had a lot of clients that have done really, really well. And lately, we have seen in some cases when we transfer the wealth to their beneficiaries, they're actually blowing the stuff faster than they should. So the second book was to talk about, to have that conversation with the kids or with family members, and so that they can see this as a blessing and teach them how to use it as opposed to just to spend it.
Can you tell us about how your son ended up joining your practice? How did you pull that off? Not everybody's able to persuade their kids to go into the family business.
Well, my son didn't want anything to do with our business. Initially, I brought him in, intern, taught him the business. He went off to college, and he did really well. So as a result of that, he got recruited by a large firm. And as a result, he worked for that firm for a number of years.
All right.
And then, he decided, he saw the flexibility he had with a family business as opposed to just in a corporate environment.
Right.
And it gave him all of the things that he wanted. So that's when he decided to come back.
Right. I mean, I think that, that's a trend we're seeing a lot just in general over the last few years, people looking for that sort of flexibility and still be able to, do work that's meaningful and lucrative and all of those good things. Well, as we sort of wrap up and get towards the end of our time together today, I want to make sure I didn't miss anything essential that you think is critical that people take away. And we also want to make sure we provide your website and your office number so that people can reach out to you if they want to go in more depth and have someone who's going to hold their feet to the fire and hold them accountable for the plans that you've advised them to make. So anything else that you'd like to discuss or cover?
Well, I normally share with people, today is the first day of the rest of your life. So it doesn't matter what you did before, you still have the rest of your life. And the things that you do today will have an impact on the rest of your life. And we always give people hope, we give them solutions, and we help hold their hands and guide them through the process. And as a result, their lives are different.
I really like that sentiment, because regardless of whether you had prepared or you didn't prepare, and say you end up in your 40s or almost 50 or something like that, and you're like, oh no, I don't have enough time to get to my number, right? At my current level of income, et cetera. And there could be so many reasons for that. People have setbacks, they have health issues, family issues, whatever, that prevents you from being where you want to be at a certain age. And so it's so encouraging to have that mindset, right? That even if you are behind, according to what you think would be an ideal plan to prepare for retirement or your later years, your older age, and transfer wealth to your beneficiaries, whoever they are, whatever they are, that it's not too late to start and make choices that are going to put you in a better position later on.
Thank you so much.
So we really appreciate you coming to talk to us today, Gerald. And I'd like to get your website and phone number up again for our viewers to see. thepowerofgenwealth.com. And what will people find when they get to your website?
It has a host of information. They can access the books at the site. They see the services that we provide, and just reach out and we'll be glad to help them.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a real pleasure. Thank you so much, viewers, for being with us today. Let's work together to close that gap.
Help comes in many forms. As a Miami-Dade County bus operator, you can help your community, help those in need, and even help yourself. Operators have the opportunity to earn more than $50,000 a year plus built-in overtime, earn more than 13 paid holidays and vacation days, and take advantage of the tuition reimbursement program. Plus, qualified new drivers will receive a $5,000 sign-on bonus. Become a driving force in our community. Apply now at miamidade.gov/bus